Welcome to Bleach Revisited. I am Karakura Gold, your host of this series in which we will be reading every single chapter of the Bleach manga, providing critical analysis, as well as personal response and discussion of how those chapters connect to the rest of the series. As usual, we'll be beginning the video with a reading of the chapter that we are currently on. This is Chapter 55, Shut. It's over, boy. You lost to Aparai Renji. You'll die here. Bleach, Chapter 55. Shut. Sorry, boy. You're just not my class. The Zanpakuto changes its size and shape according to the spirit energy of its wielder. This is the shape of my power. Goodbye, boy. It's nothing personal, but the air here doesn't suit me. I'd better finish this, and we'll be on our way. The difference in their power was clear from the first clash. When he sensed he was no match for his opponent, he could have withdrawn with only a minor wound. I hoped he would. But Ichigo would never admit defeat so easily. I think I always knew that. Can you move, Ichigo? If you can, it's not too late. Run. Hurry. Please. Run. What? What are you doing, Rukia? Let go! You're only making it worse for yourself. Let go, fool! Run, Ichigo! Get up! Get up and run! Ichigo! What? You can still move? Excellent! It's no fun butchering a crippled pig anyway. Come on, then. Swing your sword! Ichigo, if you can stand, then run. Run, Ichigo! Well, if you won't attack, I will! What? Spirit energy! What? You! What the? Where'd all that spirit energy come from? He was dying a moment ago. Where'd that power come from? Ha! What's wrong? You got slow all of a sudden. No, you got faster. I don't know why, but I feel great. Now my wound doesn't even hurt. I'm pretty sure I can take you apart. Incredible. Spirit energy is flooding out of him. It's heavy. Let's finish it. This ends in victory for me. What? The blade disappeared, but he didn't do anything. Was it him? No way! He couldn't have done anything from that distance. What's he? That is it for Chapter 55 of Bleach. Pretty quick chapter. Obviously, not a lot of dialogue. A little easier to get through. Love this Yoriichi jumping through the moon. I don't know, cat in the moon. I don't know. It's cute. Anyway, let's actually talk about this chapter. Let's get into our discussion of it. Let me get back to the beginning first, as there is a little bit going on here. With Chapter 55 shut, let's get into our analysis and response, talking about both the art and the narrative and how they're functioning. I love that we get these quick shots of all the characters involved here. That we have Byakuya, Renji, and Rukia here. Lots of really great kind of. You really get the sense that Kubo's really enjoying drawing all these different poses and really experimenting with the way of, depicting Zabimaru in these panels. And I love the way that it's like whipping around here. Of course, Rukia completely terrified. I love this also from the perspective of Renji, kind of spiraling that blade back from Ichigo's torn over shoulder. Really good stuff. Ichigo has a real problem with dropping his sword. This is not the first time that's happened. We get him with I assume that's a wishbone in his mouth and not a spoon, but it could be a spoon. I don't know. Just the contour of his lip follows through. But really, Kubo experimenting with this shading, using that kind of stark black sort of shading, the singular tone. I think it's pretty cool, and we get to see a lot more of that, and Kubo to really get comfortable with using that. Kind of getting more into artistic stuff. Whenever you want to talk about sort of flexing artistic talent, obviously you need to know anatomy to depict humans pretty well, right? No matter what your sort of stylistic inclination might be. But then also, whenever you start talking about like shading and making kind of realistic depictions of these characters, knowing the different planes of the face, right? How light and shadow fall upon a face really helps to sell that. And so we start to get a little bit of that, like studies almost from Kubo as we kind of go forward. So I like a lot of these depictions of these characters with these pretty extreme shadows. You can tell that Kubo is certainly a fan by the way that he continues to use that, and especially in these very dramatic moments. Anyway, we get this reminder that, of course, the Zanpakuto, it changes its size and shape according to the spirit energy of the wielder, right? So not just the default shape of it, the way that it looks before it's transformed, but obviously the transformed state as well. And so this is the shape of Renji's power, right? And so that's cool. The idea of personalized powers is always really interesting. Obviously, that's going to be the case in almost any series. Characters put their personal twist on the thing, and so I love that that's intrinsic to the powers here in Bleach, right? But we've gotten that with our human characters. They have very unique sort of powers that are pretty bespoke, but I like that within even the structured system of the Shinigami, where you're going to an academy, you're learning these techniques that ostensibly everybody can learn. You still have this extreme room for your Zanpakuto, which is the weapon of the Shinigami, to have such personal sort of iteration to it. So that's cool. And I think certainly one of the driving kind of factors of Bleach is always like, oh man, what's this character's like power going to be like? What's their sword do? And even now you might be thinking like, what's Byakuya's, right? Because clearly it has a different design from Renji's and even Ichigo's, so you have to wonder. Yeah, of course. Here we really get Renji insisting on calling Ichigo boy, where he hadn't been before. This sort of like, I don't know, like, hey kid, like that kind of thing. I wonder how much of a like where that is in the original Japanese, exactly like how he's kind of referring to him, because boy kind of carries different connotations whenever it's used in English at the very least. Certainly, there's a difference between their skill and their age, so it makes sense in this light. But I'm curious, exactly what Renji's kind of getting at by insisting upon calling Ichigo boy throughout. The air not suiting him on Earth is a kind of, like I think it's just Renji trying to play it cool, like nothing personal, kid. all that shit. Lots of, again, really using Zabimaru to go out of the panel to sell its size and its intimidating kind of nature. Of course, Rukia reminiscing on all of this, thinking like, well, Ichigo would never admit defeat so easily. I like this shot from where she's in both of these panels, but they are split, kind of from this moment of internalization into the actual kind of flashback scene wherever she was leaving. It's you know, curious, right? But I like that, even here Rukia is trying to get Ichigo to run, and she stops Renji from delivering that death blow in order to save Ichigo. Here we can definitely see where like the shade of his robe is kind of drawn over part of her hand here. I don't know, kind of sloppy moment in the art. I wish that there was maybe more, because we go from her just kind of standing here, clenching her fists. We don't really see that much of Renji revving up an attack. Like he's pulled back here, but then we spend an entire page elsewhere, and we only get to see him in this little panel. So it's a pretty drastic jump from what we've gotten before to this moment where she's leaping and kind of stopping Renji's attack. I wish there was maybe more build up in the previous page, right? I wish that we would have maybe gotten Renji raising his sword above his head as he is typical to do, and then we got Rukia maybe making this jump and our movement before that with Rukia and then making this jump this panel. That would have been nice, but this is it's a bit too quick based off of the context that we have earlier. Like I'm not saying it's not like you can tell what's happening or anything, but I don't know. Just also the posing of it doesn't quite sell it as well either. So it's kind of a rough moment both artistically and in the schema of the manga. I wish there was maybe a little bit more done. Rukia here doesn't look as determined as maybe like almost surprised as well. I wish her expression kind of sold this moment more too. Renji certainly sold as like, surprised that he wasn't expecting this, but yeah. I love that Renji kind of lashes out with like the "you're only making it worse for yourself, let go, fool." It's like, how can it be worse for her? She's gonna get executed, right? But this sort of insistence upon, her being idiot, like stupid or idiotic or whatever. Um, Again, that insult of fool coming up between both of them. I like that, of course, Ichigo gets up, but not to run, instead to fight. We get this nice reaction from both of them. And, whew, that line from Renji, "It's no fun butchering a crippled pig." It's like, geez, what a vicious guy. I like that Ichigo is, completely shown in shadow here, as we're left to wonder what his expression might be, how he's going to face up against Renji. But similar to what we got before, where where the Minos kind of came down with it shot at the Sero at Ichigo, and he was barely able to hold it back, and then he had this kind of flux in his power. I think the same sort of thing's happening here, where Ichigo's being put under attack, and in this moment of desperation, he's releasing maybe more of his power. He has more of it that's built up after a moment of not having it on full blast, right? So, he gets this moment of intense speed. And again, Ichigo's always kind of made out to be pretty quick, so that's cool. I like that we have Renji kind of getting ready to attack, pulling his sword above his head, and then I love the intensity of his power, making the kind of like decorative string on the back of it shatter. And Byakuya, of course, very aware of this. The first we see Ichigo kind of lift his head, we get this extreme shot of him, and then I like that's like we see Renji from afar, then we scoot real quick to him as he's trying to block now instead of attack, as he's put on the defensive for the first time really in this fight. I think that's really cool too. getting to see Renji, who's got a fantastic expression and like a wide array of expressions. This really helps to sell this moment too. And of course, Ichigo returning exactly that moment, that slash to the shoulder that he got from Renji before. I like that Renji whips around to kind of answer that, but already Ichigo has closed the distance and slashes and just bats him away. I think this is a fantastic moment from just showing just how strong Ichigo is and powerful, really. And that Renji's trying to skid and catch himself on this guardrail, and I love as much as I really do love the look of this like goggles that he has. Say goggles, this visor or whatever it is. This slash kind of coming across Renji's face and destroying his cool sunglasses visor. It sells kind of how powerful it is that he almost cut Renji's face in half. Really going for the head as he was taught, which is also cool. Ichigo then puts on a pretty cool expression as Renji is bloodied. Kind of fascinating is that Renji gets this head wound and then fights through it. You gotta wonder how much that's really kind of crippling him in this fight, and going to make everything after this even harder. I will say one thing that I kind of wish was still kind of consistent with the previous chapter is we don't see that cut on his chin anymore, which is a shame. I was hoping that would continue to be a scar or something like that, but it seems like it was minor. And of course, Ichigo's got this adrenaline flowing through him. He's pretty sure that he could take you apart, right? Which is fantastic line. I don't even remember reading that line. That's I just did the reading. Did I skip that? I'll have to see on the rewatch for this. Huh. Anyway, the idea of this energy kind of flowing out of him and being heavy is something that we've been shown before, but we haven't really gotten otherwise. Like, we haven't had it stated explicitly, but that spiritual pressure is something that would, is a concept that's in Bleach and we'll get more of later. I like that, of course, Ichigo's really coming in for the kill here. And it's interesting that as Renji was coming in for the kill on Ichigo, Kuchiki stopped it, right? Rukia did. And so as Ichigo comes in for the kill on Renji, he says, "Victory is mine." He's not gonna I'm gonna kill you or anything, but you can assume that he's probably gonna kill Renji here. Byakuya is able to shatter his blade entirely. And I love that we just get this close up of the blade completely broken. And Ichigo trying to make sense of it. And then, we just see Byakuya holding it with two fingers over here before he just kind of lets it drop and then reaches for his sword. And I love, we don't get any change in Byakuya's expression, that he's kind of just cold and distant, literally. I love this idea of well, you can't do anything with this distance. What's he? And then immediately, full page as Byakuya is behind Ichigo, and has already presumably stabbed him, right? And we get this kind of gush of blood out of Ichigo. So pretty lethal. Really sells, Byakuya as a serious threat, which we kind of got that sense anyway with him being the captain and Renji being the just like the guy that's here. Renji being the kind of loudmouth one, very expressive, and Byakuya being the quiet, kind of in control character in the background. But Byakuya really stepping in, I think, shows off this exactly, like this moment of him not being excessive or showy or underestimating his opponent. So we see a lot of Byakuya putting into practice what he kind of was hinting at earlier in the previous chapter, right? That in a lot of ways, Renji is underestimating Ichigo. He's toying with him too much. Byakuya just kind of jumps in whenever it becomes appropriate, intervenes, and then shuts Ichigo down pretty instantaneously. And you have to wonder if Ichigo's even capable of fighting with his sword broken the way that it is. But yeah, that's it for this chapter. I think artistically it is pretty cool. I like the different shots that we get of Zabimaru. We're still getting a good bit of that. Ichigo getting back up and fighting, I think, has a lot of really cool moments. I love this burst of power and the way that we get that turnaround. We get Ichigo as this kind of unexpected opponent that you don't want to kind of back into a corner in these ways. And we're starting to also get a little bit of the structure of Ichigo being this kind of opponent that maybe at first you kind of have power over, that you can fight, but once he kind of gets more resolve or puts himself more into the fight mentally or emotionally, or if he figures something out, he can kind of solve that. And we've gotten that before, right? We've seen that, especially, I think with Acid Wire, for instance, where he wasn't even able to put a wound on Acid Wire, then was able to cut him up. So, this isn't unheard of for Ichigo, but it certainly continues to kind of create this structure where we can expect Ichigo to sort of struggle at the beginning of a fight, to be really put close to losing, and then to make these kind of glorious comebacks. Of course, here Ichigo is completely shut out, but that's because he had the unfortunate kind of effect of going up against Byakuya, who, as we've come to find out, is very powerful. Probably the most powerful character that we've seen so far as a character showing off their prowess. But yeah, that's it. But that's about it for the chapter. Another one that I think is a lot of fun. Really enjoyed visiting this chapter again. If there's anything in the art or the story that I didn't notice, please let me know. If there's something that you'd like to talk about with this chapter, I'd like to know. All in all, I think, it just helps to further develop these characters. It's less world building than the previous one, for sure. It really reiterates a lot of what we've already known, confirms a lot of those things. We weren't probably expecting Ichigo to get this power up again and kind of overcome Renji. I think that's the kind of surprise that happens in this chapter, and probably the meat of it, as well as Byakuya so thoroughly defeating Ichigo. But it really very effectively sets up these sorts of stakes, right? That Ichigo is able to surprise Renji, and then Byakuya is able to surprise Ichigo, and so this idea of a character that maybe has got this greater power is able to quickly overcome you. And so you get to wonder, if this is the end for these characters or what, or if we're going to see, more of this conflict even right now. We'll have to find out in the next chapter. So I think it builds interest that way. It's like, oh, geez, what's going to happen? Ichigo just got pretty thoroughly kind of destroyed. So is he even still alive? What's the case? What's going on? How is this going to resolve? And I think a lot of these chapters have ended on this real moment of tension for that, right? Where we don't really know what's going to happen to Ichigo, and there's this very clear and serious threat, and Ichigo has been wounded in these different ways. But yeah, that's it for this chapter. This has been chapter 55 shut. Let's talk about spoilers, right? Let's talk about how this connects to the rest of Bleach. And I'll be honest, I don't have a ton of other connections. Obviously, we get a lot of the Zabimaru stuff. We get the confirmation of the Zanpakuto changing its shape and size according to their Ryatsu, right? Which, we've kind of come to understand that anyway. That fits in line with what Oetsu says about kind of asserting your will upon these Asaochi, Asaochi, whatever it is. I like that Oetsu's able to make them even into hot chicks, which is kind of wild. But, that it's not necessarily just a sword that has to be a sword with sword powers, but it can kind of be anything, so long as you're able to shape it with your Reiatsu and your will. But, it's talking about, like, using your Yatsu to make something manifest, and to kind of manifest your willpower into a concrete kind of shape to do battle. I mean, that's a lot of people will call the Hogekyo out as being kind of a plot device tool, right? That it's like, oh, what, you can just grant anybody's wishes? That seems broken. That seems, just like plot nonsense. But it's like, yo, that's like the whole structure of power in this series, is that characters are able to, like, literally using their own spiritual power manifest their desires. It's not just like, oh, okay, you have a sword and that sword has cool powers. It's like, no, you're concentrating your spiritual power into this thing and making it literally take form to reflect your power. Um, and I mean, like, if you kind of abstract that, essentially what the Hokekyo is doing is the same sort of thing that a Zanpakuto is doing, which makes sense because Zanpakuto are essentially the same thing, where the Hokekyo is an amalgamation of a ton of souls. The Zanpakuto, or at least the Asaochi, are also a soul amalgamation, just forged into a different way, and probably of, not quite the same sort of souls are, you know, all of that. So I have more to speculate on that later, but it's certainly, I think a lot of people have a lot of grief with the Hogekyo because they see it as really divorced from a lot of the other systems in Bleach, whereas I definitely understand it as connected to all these other things, but that's because maybe I'm reading these on a more conceptual level rather than on a more literal level. And I think Kubo certainly, like, he has like this sense of, like, actual, like, literal kind of moments, this, again, this real sense of the physicality of things being very, very important, right? That he's very aware of, again, like, the way that Renji has to swing a sword like this, how Byakuya positions himself. I love that Byakuya is constantly away from the fight, because if you consider his powers, he would need to be away from it if he was actually to use his Shikai or his Bankai. So that's kind of cool. Um, of course, I like that we do get this, like, idea that Rukia is willing to kind of make things worse for himself to help somebody else. I mean, that's the reason that she helped Ichigo in the first place, and we would come to see that she would continue to do that in the future too. Um, yeah, this sort of power up from Ichigo I read is both, like, I read it as a couple different things, right? It's him kind of releasing a bunch of his spirit energy intentionally, um, sort of awaiting to a little bit more of that power, maybe being kind of like, because he's been put so close to death, but isn't seriously, grievously wounded. Him coming back from that, maybe. He does mention that his, that he feels great and his wound doesn't even hurt. And I wonder how much that is adrenaline versus, if there is anything else there actually power wise, right? As we do know that Blute has, like, those sorts of powers. But I don't read it really as a use of his Quincy power. Like I said, I read it as more of, like, just Ichigo being in this kind of fighting moment and this Ryatsu pouring through him. Of course, the idea of being, his weapon being destroyed, but especially, like, the two finger stopping his sword, that's something that we see again from Aizen, right? So that's pretty wild. That here we of course get that from Byakuya. The shattering of the weapon is something that's pretty consistent with Ichigo throughout too. We'd see that a couple of different times, of course. This moving so quick that from all the way over there he's able to move behind Ichigo in that way and then stab him is pretty intense. I think it's something that we would also see, whenever I say Ichigo definitely throws these sorts of things back in the face of his opponents. Whenever Ichigo himself becomes so fast that he's able to close the distance on Byakuya, we kind of get a revisitation of that. So that's kind of cool, right? But yeah, that's it for this chapter. Very short one, comparatively. I don't have as much to say about any of these. less kind of rambling going on. This one will be actually around 30 minutes, which is a surprise. But if you have anything that you notice about this chapter, especially to connect to the other chapters, go ahead and let me know. Just make sure that you tag your comment as being related to spoilers so that other people do not get spoiled if they're trying to avoid it. As always, I am Karker Gold, reminding you that spirits are forever with you. Stay gold.